Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every day by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. Be sure to tell us where you're checking in from, get your questions in. Also, let us know what you're drinking this morning. We'd love to see that. And we got a lot to talk about before we get to questions. And guys, let's start with NFL contracts, as a lot of the draftees from this year's group of Longhorns are starting to sign them.
Yeah, there's still some ways to go here, but the biggest news over the weekend has to be Kelvin Banks, young man out of Humble, Texas. Of course, started all 3 years at for the Longhorns. Guys, $27 million guaranteed. I want y'all. I just want you to think about that.
$7 million signing bonus.
This young man, I want to say this now. This young man 3 years ago, before he entered the university, I guess 3.5 years ago now, Jerry, before he entered the University of Texas, he and his family were fighting to pay hospital bills for his mom.
Yep.
Okay. $27 million later, mom's going to get taken care of. And so hats off to Kelvin. Also, Barron Sorrell, Jaden Blue, Hayden Connor, Quinn Ewers signed their contracts for various amounts. Gunnar Helm signed his as well. We do not know the terms of Gunner's, though. Those weren't published. Barron Sorrell, though, got a guarantee, a signing bonus of $941,000. Jaden Blue, $400,000 signing bonus. Later round picks like Hayden Connor and Quinn Ewers got a little bit less. Hayden Connor, 174. Quinn Ewers, 130. But obviously, the overall deals, if they actually make the team, pick up. Still to be signed, Jahdae Barron and Matthew Golden, Alfred Collins, Andrew Makuba, Vernon Broughton, as well as Cam Williams. Interestingly, neither of the two Philadelphia Eagles picks have been signed. And I was looking at their list yesterday. They are not a quick signing team, if that makes sense. Like some people, some teams like sign their guys really quickly. They are not signed real quickly. So interesting tactic. I don't know if that's purposeful by Howie Roseman or just how it fell this year, but he is obviously a guy to track as a general manager, since he seems to be the cat's meow to other people these days as a GM.
And I've said before, but this is the Kelvin Banks. This is the good side of NIL. People talk about the bad side of NIL, maybe with kids and families getting money and the kids blowing a lot of the money if they don't have good people around them, and the bad stories that will eventually come out of NIL. And there will be some bad stories. But then this is the good side. I mean, this is the good side of it too, because Kelvin Banks was able to help his mom medically through NIL at Texas, which was huge for the family. And I love that. I just love that the Kelvin Banks story, I think, is such a good one because, you know, it's a 5-star guy who came in and worked from day one like he wasn't a highly ranked player. He was supremely focused. Obviously, I think that's his MO anyways. I think that's how he's wired. But his mom's health issue certainly pushed that forward, the maturity level forward of a Kelvin Banks. But again, you can only do that if you have good people around you. Kenny Harrison, his high school coach, obviously his father. So he's one of the really good stories through NIL to me because of how much it actually helped his mom in a situation medically that's extremely, extremely expensive.
Dad too, the whole family.
Yeah,
help them. I mean, that's one of the ways it goes. You know, Texas baseball, not quite so good a weekend, guys. Lost 2 of 3 to Florida, Blake. That makes 5 of the last 6 they've lost in conference. What was once a 5-game lead in conference is now down to a 2-game lead with 3 games remaining against all 3 against OU this coming weekend. Texas has to win 2 of 3 to guarantee winning the SEC Conference regular season championship. Florida kind of, you know, other than a late inning outburst against Florida on Saturday, the bats were quiet again for the Longhorns. The last 2 series combined, they've lost 42 runs to 17 runs. You're not going to win many series if you score 8 total runs in a series. Just not going to happen very often. You're asking too much of your pitching. The bats have gone quiet for Jim Schlossnagle a little bit. Clearly, they lost a big-time pitcher on a Friday thing as well. But they go into the weekend series against OU with a 2-game lead. Hopefully, they win the conference after such an unbelievable start to it. But I think injuries are starting to catch up to them, Blake.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And what worries me, a lot of people don't realize the SEC tournament is just a few days after the OU series. So you need to clinch that 2-round bye so you can rest your pitchers. Yeah. Because depth is already very shallow. They end the Oklahoma series on Saturday, which is the 17th. And then the SEC tournament starts on May 20th, that Tuesday. So not a lot of rest. It's very important that you win a game or two. This was hopefully 2 this weekend, maybe 3 would be phenomenal, but got to keep that lead for depth concerns going forward.
Absolutely. I mean, it's getting into the time of year where baseball getting ready to go into the playoffs. So.
Two games to win the series against Oklahoma, and you're the regular season SEC champions. And to me, even though they've kind of the injuries have caught up with them, that would be massive in year 1 under Jim Schlossnagle. I mean, to win the SEC regular season title in baseball, literally, I don't think anybody would have bet on that prior to the season. So if they can take care of business in this series, they will claim that, which I think would be massive for this program.
Yep. And I think we should also note while we're talking about that softball is hosting as well, fellas. Softball, as David Rawls says, gets the 6th overall seed. They'll have Central Florida, Michigan, and Eastern Illinois here in the regional in Austin. So congratulations to Mike White and crew.
And then if they win this as expected and they would host a super regional. I was incorrect last night. They host a super regional against the winner of the Clemson region, I guess is what that is. So that they would host super regional. I think 7 of the top 8 seeds are SEC teams. Only Florida State. So I guess softball's dominating in the South. Let's just go ahead and throw that out there. The top 8 seeds are either SEC or Florida State.
Yeah. All right, well, before we move on, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell everyone out there about John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some recruiting news to get to. We would like to thank our sponsor, John Donovan, President, Longhorn Wealth Management. John's a proud Texas Life member whose wife and 6 siblings are also UT grads. The family passion for UT is what led John to brand his firm, Longhorn Wealth Management Group, and dedicate it to providing investment, retirement, insurance, and estate planning services and solutions to Longhorn families across the nation. John wants to congratulate our UT women's rowing team for winning the SEC championship in their inaugural season in the conference. Congrats, ladies. To celebrate that SEC championship, John is offering all OTF fans the opportunity to achieve their own financial retirement championship by taking advantage of a free 90-minute private consultation. Learn how working with a certified financial planner like John can help you maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and ensure your legacy. Call John and Longhorn Wealth Team, 972-707-4900. That's 972-707-4900. Or go online, www.longhornwealth.net, to schedule your free 90-minute private consultation with John today. Hook them from John and the group at Longhorn Wealth Management.
Well, as you said, we have some recruiting to talk about. Jerry, I'm going to let you take the lead on that.
Yeah, so the Texas staff's on the road. It's a big week on the road. And obviously, I posted a story about some of the places the staff's expected to be this week. I'm in the Sunshine State. Yes, y'all having fun with the dark hotel room, but it's just the better lighting that way. I'll be out and about later today. It's a little bit of a rainy day in South Florida, but Kenny Baker is in the state. He's going to see James Johnson and Kendall Gerville the next couple of days. We'll see which one's which. Kyle Flood will be in the state, going to see Sam Roseburg, Clearwater, IMG Academy. Mark Orfe, I believe, he's in the state. Maybe going to see Justice Fitzpatrick. I'm sure AJ Milwee will swing through American Heritage. Kenoto Hudson's been in Florida ever since the live period started, hitting schools. He's been out and about. So then we'll have coaches in the state of Georgia, which we're going to get to in a second. We're going to take a look at linebacker recruiting, which I think is getting interesting. And what linebacker and wide receiver, the two positions in this class where I kind of look at right now, and I'm like, I'm not sure how they really know it's going to unfold right now. They're in on some really good players. Some guys have committed elsewhere too, or maybe aren't as much of a realistic option as they were 2 months ago. So how are these positions going to shake out? The Texas staff will be all over Georgia and Florida this week. And it's a big week because not only are these school visits, the times have changed. These are in-home visits. So when a Kenny Baker or a Mark Orfe or a Kyle Flood, when they go to the school, yep, they're going to the school. They're going to be at spring practice. They're going to talk to the coach. But then after that, they go do an in-home visit now. That's where the recruiting's really changed. And Sark talked about that a couple of Mondays ago with the Touchdown Club of Houston, saying head coaches aren't even really involved in the in-home visit process anymore. That's all because they can't be on the road in the spring. They can in January, but they can only meet at the school, not at the home, which makes no sense. Obviously, if you're able to meet with a kid in the family, the parents have to come to a school. But so the assistants have a lot on their plate now as far as the in-home visit process. And obviously it's not a big deal because the official visits happen in June right before then decisions around senior season. All majority of the guys Texas recruiting. But it's a big week on the road. Look, James Johnson, I think, will solidify his official visit to Texas this week. I expect that to be June 20th through 22nd. That's the same weekend Kendall Gerville's coming in. Obviously, Justice Fitzpatrick, younger brother Minka Fitzpatrick at St. Thomas Aquinas there in Lauderdale. That looks like it could be headed towards a Georgia versus Texas battle. And obviously on the Georgia side, that's Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann, who were big in that recruitment. And Schumann was part of his development. Obviously, before Kirby went to Georgia, Minka ended up at Alabama. But I think Texas did quite well in their April unofficial visit there. Sam Roseborough, who obviously I've said many times his mom lives in Austin now, I think continues to be a pretty heavy lean to Texas, but we'll go through the official visit process there. And then we'll see on Derek Cooper. Chad Scott is expected to be at Chaminade Madonna this week to see Derek Cooper, the 5-star running back. We expect an official visit date to come out at some point this week. One of the top prospects in the country. He had a great visit to Texas. No doubt Texas is getting an official visit there. It's just, are they going to juggle the weekend versus weekday visits around for Texas? Again, another one that could come down to Georgia, Texas, maybe Miami. But Georgia and Texas, Georgia and Texas, Texas and Florida, they're battling in the Sunshine State on a number of guys. I mean, Kendall Gerville is, Texas is right there swinging with Florida and Georgia and maybe Miami. James Johnson, pretty much the same schools with a little bit more of a Miami in there now. So it's Texas versus Georgia versus Florida in a couple of states because Florida's recruiting the state of Georgia really hard as well. And then you have Chris Jackson. I expect to see Aaron, the wide receiver Aaron Gregory committed to Texas A&M this week amongst others in Georgia as well. And we'll see where Jeff Banks spot recruits. He's kind of moving all over the place. Wouldn't be surprised to see him in North Carolina.
Interesting. Good stuff, Jerry. Really good stuff.
And I know you wanted to talk linebacker recruiting, go a little more in depth there. And I'm actually going to start with this comment from David Williams. He says, Texas needs to consistently recruit the linebacking position well in order for each team to have 4 dominant linebackers on the roster.
I think they've done that to this point very well. Now, the interesting thing that's happened for me with linebacker recruiting so far in this cycle is Braden Rouse, and we're going to play his highlight video while I talk about linebacker recruiting. But Braden Rouse, in the state of Georgia, is absolutely loaded at linebacker in this class. Obviously, Tyler Atkinson, Xavier Griffin, who I'll get to in a second. Those are the names early on because they were 5-star prospects early, elite prospects and players at an early age. Braden Rouse kind of came on a little later. He's at Marietta Kell, the Longhorns. I don't know what that means, but it could mean a lot on the commitment day if he goes to Texas. I'm sure there'll be something around that. But Braden Rouse is a guy that when Texas was out in January, going to see Xavier Griffin, going to see Tyler Atkinson, they love Braden Rouse. And Braden Rouse, obviously Texas, Alabama, Tennessee are your main 3 players there in that recruitment. I think Michigan's involved as well, but it's expected to be one of the 3 SEC schools, but had a great unofficial visit to Texas this spring. Will be on campus June 13th through 15th. Has that frame, that Johnny Nansen has been coveting since he's been at Texas. So Braden Rouse has become one of the top linebackers in the country in a state that already has two guys that are ranked as 5 stars. Xavier Griffin, the USC commitment. I expect Texas to get an official visit from. I think USC's claws are pretty deep in that one right now. It'll have to play out during the season. I think with that recruitment, more than likely. Tyler Atkinson, I think I'm picking Georgia there. We'll see if Ohio State can upset Georgia in that one, but I think Texas is faded there a little bit. I think Texas really likes Braden Rouse. Then obviously in-state Kosiok Paula from Maid Creek he's a Texas lean. Then you have Tank King, who probably is a Notre Dame lean, the inside backer from Port Arthur Memorial. He is on the OV list as well.
Tyson Iwiokwo, how do we say that out of Georgetown, Jerry?
Yeah.
Now he had an injury, I think, this spring, didn't he? That he had.
Yeah, he did. He did because he couldn't compete at the Under Armour camp in Houston with some teammates. And then I think he just had a minor knee scope, but it's kept him out of spring ball. CJ Vogel went by there last week. It's kept him out of spring ball. Texas hasn't been by this spring. So that's a pretty telling sign of where they feel like they're at with other guys and who their top targets are going to be.
Jerry, another recruiting note over the weekend. Richie Wesley out of California committed to Oregon, a big defensive end prospect, but he's saying he's still going to visit Texas, or at least his parents are saying that. What do you make of that kind of situation? Do you think Texas is going to still push on him, or do you not know yet?
I think he's one of the top edges on the board, but it'll be interesting to see Dre Quinn. Texas is doing well with Dre Quinn. Trenton Henderson from Pensacola Catholic. I think Alan Clark's supposed to be there this week, by the way, some point this week. He's scheduled to officially visit. Jake Krull from IMG, who's originally from Orlando, Bishop Moore High, scheduled to officially visit. Luke Waffle from the Hun School in Princeton, one of the top edges in the country, scheduled to officially visit. So here's the updated Blake's great board of that, the hot board for the official visits. Texas has a number of other edges that are already scheduled for official visits. And the Wesley recruitment would play out into the season. So it'll be interesting to see where Texas is at as far as edge recruiting when they get into the season.
Hey, Jerry, we're also getting, while we're on the subject of recruiting, a lot of questions
Throw them out there
about Jalen Lott. And people seem to be a little concerned, such as Clayton here. Jalen Lott said his mom liked USC the best. Also said he doesn't look at his dad being at Texas as a helping factor. And then Clayton goes on talking about CJ's video with Jalen Lott, saying he didn't seem like he was that excited about Texas. Is there any concern that Texas is falling out of the race?
Falling out of the race? No. This is going to go through the official visit process. Sister runs track at USC. But I would say have some patience and let this thing get in through June. And
isn't he announcing on July 4th? Is that right?
Yeah. I would say let's let this thing get through June and see where we're at. Because again, look, there's different directions these recruitments go nowadays. There's some schools, and they're pretty obvious, which lead with NIL, right? And that can make a dent early on. And then there's recruitments that, look, it has to play out, and maybe the parents don't sit down with kids until it becomes that time when decisions really get close. So I would say just have some patience. That one and Caden Finley, and see where it all falls. But falling out of the race, I'm not worried about that.
Okay, well, we have more recruiting questions. We'll come back to those here in a little bit. First, guys, I want to talk to you about CBS Sports. Came out with a top 25, a post-spring top 25, but they also took a look at each team's most important game. And I'm going to go ahead and show you where Texas is ranked in their most important game, and then we'll come back and we'll look at the top 25. And they have Texas number 2, with the most important game being at Georgia. And they go on to talk about Texas losing to Georgia twice last season, and that being their only setback before being eliminated, of course, in the college football playoffs. But says that Georgia appears to be the biggest remaining hurdle for Texas to clear on its path back to truly elite status.
That's kind of what I wrote on Texas football yesterday, because the chat conversations late last week got me thinking about that. I did on TexasFootball.com kind of a story about toughest environment, toughest road environment, toughest games, trap games, all that, because we love the chat and we always love to talk about this, especially in the off season. And I put Georgia there as maybe the most important. I almost agree with this because, look, Georgia is going to go off the schedule after this year, Bobby, for a couple of years. So unless you play them in the SEC championship game, Texas and Georgia have an opportunity, I think, to become the SEC rivalry, the game. But it can only happen if Texas wins a game. Otherwise, there's no rivalry. So if Texas goes to Georgia this year and loses, and they're 0-3 against Georgia, and then you don't see them for 2 years, there's not really a rivalry. But if Texas wins this game this year, there's a lot on the line. If you look at Georgia's schedule, this is the most difficult Georgia schedule they've had prior to a game to a game like this in mid-November. I think it's going to be interesting to watch the Dogs. But this is a huge win, a huge game for Texas, because you want to create the rivalry, but you can only create a rivalry if you win a game. You can't create a rivalry if you lose 3 in a row.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know about becoming the rivalry in that in the conference. I took exception with a couple of things that were written there. First of all, I think that Ohio State's the biggest game of the year, because I think that sets the tone for the year. So most important, I don't know. My most important game is probably A&M late, just because it always is. It sets the tone for the next recruiting cycle in state, etc. But the game that sets the tone for the year is Ohio State. So I disagree with this decision. And also, I will say this: Georgia needs a quarterback right now, like a big time quarterback. I don't know that they have that. So let's wait and see this season, Jerry, on that. My biggest concern or BS. Calling BS on something here, excuse my French, but Georgia, quote, appears to be the biggest remaining hurdle for Texas to clear on its path back to truly elite status. What is truly elite status if it's not 2 consecutive semifinal appearances? What is it?
I think they tie it to when Kirby Smart was struggling to beat Nick Saban, and then he had to get over that hurdle, and then they eventually won a national championship.
But they were elite back then. You didn't hear people saying, "Oh, are they elite or not?"
Yeah.
No, Texas was on the 2-yard line against Ohio State to tie the game in the 4th quarter. Okay, give me a break is all I'm saying. Texas is an elite program right now, clearly, and I think that people are trying to find nits to pick in that regard. They finished 2 top 5s in a row. That's elite. What is Clemson not elite? Have they finished in the top 10 in the last 3 years? I'm just putting stuff like that out there. I feel like you got to say Notre Dame's elite right now, right? They haven't won a national championship under Marcus Freeman either. Penn State, are they elite? They haven't won a national championship under James Franklin, yet somehow Texas gets picked on for the whole back conversation. I just disagree is all I'll say.
Well, let's take a look at we won't do the whole top 25, but they got Ohio State 1, Texas 2, Penn State 3, Clemson 4, Georgia 5, and then Oregon, Notre Dame, LSU, Alabama, and Florida close out your top 10.
When I looked at this article and sent this out this morning, one of the things that really stuck out to me, and I've looked at it a few weeks ago, this is going to be the best first weekend of college football meaningful games in a long time. If you look at this, go back, Blake, real quick, if you would. Okay, so obviously they have Ohio State-Michigan game, but Ohio State and Texas play first weekend of the year. You go down, then there are massive games. Notre Dame plays at Miami first weekend of the year. LSU plays at Clemson first weekend of the year. This is, and then there's other big games. This is a massive first weekend of the season. And I don't know if schedules are done years in advance, but I really think with the college football playoff eventually going to 16 and one game not mattering as much, I think we're going to see more of this, Bobby. I mean, these are some massive games. And what it's going to do, it's going to shape your rankings for about the first month or 6 weeks of the season, because the Texas Ohio State winner, somebody's dropping, not significantly probably, but dropping. Same with Notre Dame, Miami. Same with LSU, Clemson. Alabama at FSU was a bigger game 2 years ago than it is today, obviously, but that's still a pretty big game in college football. We'll see what FSU has to bring to the table. And obviously, Kalen DeBoer better not lose that in year 2. But there's some huge first weekend games. I mean, maybe it's just recency bias, but I don't remember that many impactful games on the first weekend. And even Auburn's at Baylor first weekend of the year, by the way. Auburn at Baylor.
Is this a misprint? And did I just not know that Kansas State, Iowa State play on August 23rd?
They kicked off the season.
They have the date wrong.
They have the date wrong?
It's August 28th, right? But it's early. It's one of the first games of the season.
Wait, hang on. No, it is the 23rd. Excuse me. It's week 0 technically, because they're playing Dublin.
They're playing in Dublin. They're the Dublin game this year.
Kansas State is a 3.5-point favorite.
Because all of those Irish Iowa State people and Kansas State people, I mean, I understand at least with Notre Dame, right? I mean, that's their nickname. What, Iowa State and K-State in Dublin?
Yeah, Iowa State fans, from what I was reading a couple weeks ago, are not happy because, they wanted this game at home, number one, but they are saying that their home schedule this year sucks, period. So they were griping that the game got moved to Dublin.
Casey has the answer. Casey has the answer. Beer has wheat.
And corn.
That's on me, I guess. Jeez.
Well, there was the top 15. Some others of note in the actual top 25. You got Oklahoma at 18 there. They have Texas being the biggest game for Oklahoma. And then what other SEC schools? You got South Carolina, Auburn, and that's really about it. Oh, and Tennessee, excuse me.
Yeah, no, there's 8 SEC teams in there. Obviously, to start the season as far as CBS's top 25 go. Interesting that Arizona State. I didn't take much issue with this ranking, other than why TCU would be picked ahead of Arizona State. That may there's no, I don't see that at all. Not a chance. And I will say this: I think Arizona State or Tech's going to win the Big 12, and that will be for a playoff spot. So that's going to be big. I think one of those two teams is going to win the Big 12 this year.
I'm very excited to see exactly what I'm excited in one way only, and that's just sheer, third-party interest in what Cody Campbell has done with the Texas Tech roster with all these transfer portal guys, because they have spent a lot of money in the transfer portal, and they didn't make a move at quarterback. I mean, look, is Baron Morton an elite quarterback? Is he a guy that's not going to throw the ball to the other team enough for you to win a championship? I don't know. It's funny that they spent all that money but didn't spend it at quarterback.
Yeah, Tech's always
has not proven that he can be an elite coach.
Tech's always loved Baron Morton. He's just had an injury history. I like Baron. I saw him at a couple of camps coming out of high school. He's just, that guy struggled staying healthy. He had a pretty good season last year when you break it down. But is he going to make the big jump this year? If I get in the game against Arizona State and it's Sam Leavitt and Baron Morton in the Big 12 championship game, Tech will be the more talented team on the field, but a lot of teams are more talented than Arizona State last year too.
I will say this. I agree here a little bit, Jerry, with Des Garrett. I think Arizona State will miss Cam Scatterby. I think while Leavitt was a real playmaker for them, Scatterby was the heart and soul of that team. He kind of gave them a rough and tumble attitude that that they're going to lack without him. Even if they have another Relique Brown is more of a speed back, for example. I don't know that they're going to have that play action combo without Scatterbo there. So I'm waiting on Arizona State, although I love their quarterback. I think Tech. I don't see how anybody that watches the Big 12 couldn't have Tech number one going into that conference this year with what they did in the offseason. Maybe if you don't appreciate what they did, I mean, what they signed like 5 guys that were all conference from another league in the portal. I mean, they got some guys in the portal. So we'll see how it goes. Again, fascinating for me just to watch from afar. Of course, more interested in what Texas does with its portal guys, but that's a different story.
Okay, well, before we move on, I'm going to tell everyone out there today about Huel. And if you're constantly on the move or just tired of skipping meals, Huel has you covered. Their Black Edition ready to drink is a total game changer. I got one right here, strawberry banana. It tastes great. It's a complete meal in a bottle with 35 grams of protein, 27 vitamins and minerals, high fiber, low sugar. You're going to feel full, focused, and ready for your day. There's no prep, no cleanup. Just grab it and go. Now, Huel's already sold over 500 million meals around the world, and now it's your turn to try it. New customers get 15% off plus a free gift at Huel.com. That's Huel.com when you use code ONTexas. And during the school year, my mornings are insane. I'm trying to get my 3 kids off to school, trying to prepare for coffee and football. Needless to say, it's a little hectic, and that's where Huel Black Edition comes in. It's my go-to. I grab it out of the fridge, give it a good shake, and I'm ready to go. It keeps me full, energized, and focused so I can tackle whatever the day may throw at me. And it's a huge time saver, obviously. It takes the guesswork and time out of healthy eating. No prep, no cooking, just a quick, nutritious meal. So start saving time and money without compromising your nutrition today with their exclusive offer for new customers. You're going to get 15% off plus a free gift when you use promo code ONTexas at Huel.com. Again, 15% off. They're going to send you a nice free gift. That's for new customers only using promo code ONTexas at Huel.com. That's Huel.com. Please see their description for terms and conditions. Skip the stress, not the nutrition. Try Huel today for complete nutrition bottles.
Hey, Blake, your helmet's not spinning, so
Oh man, I saw that this morning and completely. Oh, I'll have to get the little tool to fix it. It's gonna be a minute.
Hey, by the way, I want to add this because I said this last night on a Longhorn live stream, and I might have caught some people by surprise. But something crazy is Cam Scatterbo last year didn't even have 100K in NIL. That's just a discrepancy.
Before the run, probably. Before the run. He probably made some money during the run, I would imagine.
Not what I was told. I mean, so it's interesting, the total discrepancy among some. Now, Arizona State's going up. Like, they got the stud running back from Army, Kanye Udo, who rushed for 1,000+ yards at 6 yards a carry, had some big games. He transfers in, and obviously it's kind of funny how this is going. He's going to make a lot more than Cam Scatterbo did last year at Arizona State.
Yeah, well, that may be what Kenny Dillingham needed. They needed a little push to get people involved.
That's right.
But now some donors are buying into what he's selling, and it makes it a little bit easier for him to get going. I think, that's part of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Yeah. Well, I think with the donors, winning has to come first.
Yeah.
Then they buy into the head coach, and then all of a sudden getting money becomes a little bit easier for people because the proof is in the pudding.
Hey, Blake, we got to answer this. Where's the hoodie from?
I think, if memory serves me correctly, I bought it, and it's not really a hoodie. It's more of just a hooded, like, very light pullover because it's really thin. I think I got it from inside the football stadium there in the team shop. Oddly enough, that place has the best baseball clothes, like way better than what Texas offers in its own baseball stadium. So I'm almost positive that's where I got it, though.
They probably have a bigger footprint, more space to sell stuff there.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, it's one thing we need to hit on because it happened after Coffee and Football is the Hayward Howard Jr. commitment at cornerback last week. But he committed Friday at around 2 p.m. We're on Longhorn live stream, Rod, myself, and Jeff Howe when that went down. So it might be a good time to talk a little defensive back recruiting as well, because obviously I mentioned Orfe. He's expected to see Justice Fitzpatrick this week. I think he saw Samari Matthews in North Carolina last week. Was out in Johnny Nansen, Orfe, and others were by to see Devon Benjamin at Westlake Village and Oaks Christian last week as well. So with a corner, Hayward Howard in the boat now, and obviously with this recruitment, while we play his highlight tape, it's 6'2" and change, about 175, with a long arm corner in the boat. One guy's in the boat now, with the understanding that this just motivates LSU, right? This is a recruitment that will continue to play out. And I think they had a great visit to Texas. And I think they committed to Texas for all the right reasons. But Frank Wilson and Corey Raymond aren't going to throw their hands up and walk away. So this is a guy you have to recruit like he's not committed all the way through. But I just wanted to throw that out there because that's just the way these recruitments go. I mean, remember, Texas kept recruiting Wardell Mack when he was committed to Florida. LSU and Texas kept coming on Wardell Mack. Texas eventually flipped him. So all these schools have to recruit these out-of-state guys. They get committed like they're not committed at all. But that's one corner in the boat. You have Samari Matthews. You have Justice Fitzpatrick. You have Devon Benjamin. You have Yaheem Riley at Austin Anderson. I think right now we've kind of seen those 5 guys maybe elevate themselves a little bit on the defensive backboard for Texas.
So time. I'm writing these down. You said outside of Howard, who were they?
Justice Fitzpatrick out of St. Thomas Aquinas, younger brother of Minka Fitzpatrick. Then you have Yaheem Riley, the nickel out of Austin Anderson, who played at LBJ the last couple of years. Then you have Devon Benjamin, the do-it-all DB, can play anywhere, DB out of Oaks Christian, Westlake Village. And then you have Samari Matthews out of Huff High in Cornelius, about 10 miles north of Charlotte, who had a great unofficial visit. And I think that could come down to Texas versus Clemson, maybe South Carolina, too. Those are the 3. But I think Texas is doing pretty well with Samari Matthews. They're right there battling Georgia for Justice Fitzpatrick, Devon Benjamin. That's Oregon, Texas, Ohio State, USC. And then Yaheem Riley, I think Texas leads for. So you're kind of seeing some of the targets at DB kind of maybe tighten a little bit here. Cameron Hamil had a great visit. Texas, and I'm not saying this, like I said, Caden Dixon-White, even though he committed elsewhere, Texas loved Caden Dixon-White. He just didn't pick Texas. Texas really liked Cameron Hamil, maybe pushing for other guys more than him. And it has nothing to do with talent there, I don't think, because he's a very talented kid. But I think we're kind of starting to see Texas kind of consolidate around some DBs right now. Now, Kenodo Hudson was at Cocoa High last week looking at a kid named CJ Hester, who I've seen before, who has Florida, Auburn, some schools like that as a nickel safety. So taking a look at guys, they're continuing to take a look at guys. Brody Jennings, I saw last Thursday at Mandarin. Texas is looking at Brody Jennings. But I think those 5 names right now for Texas are maybe guys that definitely follow. Then you have Jermaine Bishop, who's an athlete, right? I mean, he can play wide out. He can play corner. He's definitely going to be a return man. And I think Texas is doing well with Bishop. He officially visits June 20th as well. Again, he could play either side of the ball. I mean, him and Jalen Lott are very similar in that regard. They're just such explosive playmakers that they literally could be just as good at wide receiver as they could at corner or in the secondary. But those 5 defensive backs, and one of those guys is in state, Bobby.
Yeah. What about Jordan Thomas? Anything on him? The young man from New Jersey.
Yeah, I haven't heard that in that being a guy right now.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's what I was.
Doesn't mean it can't change.
Yeah. No, he was one I had circled as kind of a question mark. Chase Calicut as a safety.
Yeah. The question with Calicut, I've actually heard he really likes Washington and Oregon's there. But the thing with Calicut is kind of, what is he? I mean, he's a big kid. He is a safety. But somebody in the chat may disagree with me. But he has a big frame now. I mean, long frame. And he hasn't even come close to kind of starting to build out that frame. And in fact, there's some at North Shore that think he could end up being more of a linebacker, hybrid linebacker, more in that I'm not comparing him as a player, Maurice Blackwell type of mold, maybe more of a hybrid, but we'll see. I mean, he can really run. But like I said, even those at North Shore who have been there many decades, seen all those guys come through, kind of think he may be better as a hybrid linebacker closer to the line of scrimmage.
Let's piggyback some team news on top of your recruiting stuff, Jerry, if you don't mind.
Yep.
I spoke to someone over the weekend about the secondary, the Texas secondary, and I need to get this out there because I think there are people that are wanting like clear-cut answers about who's where and who's going to be first string nickel, who's going to be did Jalen Gilbo do enough to stay at corner? Those questions have not necessarily been answered yet, is what I'm being told. And Texas is not disappointed in the fact that it's not completely answered. They want competition, in part because they think some young guys have some real upside. Cade Phillips among them, Wardell Mack among them. We'll see what all this means. But what I would say to folks that say, oh, well, it's Jelani McDonald and Michael Taft and Derek Williams is a three-man safety rotation. Well, don't forget about Xavier Filsaime and possibly Jordan Johnson-Rebelli or Jonah Williams when he starts playing football full-time, okay? At nickel, Wardell Mack had a really good spring, but does Jalen Gilbo stick at corner? I don't think that decision has been made yet based on what I'm being told. So, in other words, until you figure out where the piece of Jalen Gilbo goes, you don't know the rest of the secondary. And I think Texas is wanting competition this summer and heading into fall camp before they have to set their feet in stone and say, this is what we're going to do. I think that's based on what I'm being told. There's a lot of talent on campus. And if you're not improving every day, you're likely to get passed. So there's no rush, I guess is the best way to put it. They're willing to throw the dice out there and see who steps up and who doesn't, et cetera, because a lot of talent in the Texas secondary right now overall.
Yeah, and when you bring in three new secondary coaches, this is kind of they had a limited, even though it's spring practice, they still have a limited window to learn those kids from a on the field, off the field, the room, the meeting room standpoint, right, Bobby? And when you have that much talent like they do, when you bring in three new defensive back coaches, and Kenodo Hudson was there, right? So that helps. He was more familiar with the guys, but still now he's coaching the nickels. And it's a different look at it. They have so much talent at that position that, making decisions now doesn't make much sense for those guys. In reality, they're still learning these guys. And now they get to watch what do they do with Torrey Becton? What are the reports coming from Torrey Becton when they aren't watching, when nobody's watching, that help continue to form their opinions on who they believe they can count on the most. And then there's the continued development under different voices. So that's the one position. And when we look at the Ohio State game, that's one of the things I'm going to harp on for a while. That's the one position because of the three new coaches at that position and losing a couple All-American level players that, that's the one position going into which I say they may improve. Them and offensive line may improve more than any other position as the season moves along, no matter how much experience some of those Texas secondary players have coming back, because it's new voices, it's new teaching, it's new coaching, it's new guys leading their meeting rooms. There's a lot of change there for those guys, along with losing two All-Americans.
And we got a super chat regarding the subject here from It's 420 Somewhere. With Akina back and pushing for the best five to start, what are the chances we see a starting lineup with all corners and none of the traditional safeties?
Zero. Yeah. Zero. Jelani McDonald and or Derek Williams are going to start, and Michael Taft's going to play. And I would add this. I'm going to also, based on my conversation on Saturday or Sunday, I think it's Sunday morning. I would push back on starting five. I think Texas wants to rotate a lot. That's my opinion. I think they're they want to play some young guys because they think they've got some young guys right now that need that time to force their way in there. Not unlike, and I'll use Jelani McDonald as an example, Jerry. Until the Vanderbilt game, I don't know that Texas knew what they had with Jelani McDonald last year.
Yeah.
When he was forced into action, and so I think they want to do a little bit of that. Now, after Ohio State, they've got 3 games that should be, I don't want to call them layups, but they should be heavily, heavily favored. I think all of them 20 plus point favorites, if not 30. So I think you're going to see some tinkering there. About 8 deep is what it sounds like right now. May go deeper, maybe a little shallower too. So we'll see. But there's no chance, in my opinion, that you see all 5 corners. Michael Taft's not lining up at corner anytime this century, I don't think. So anyway,
I don't think you can do that in the SEC either. I mean, that's tough.
And who if your safety is Quandre Diggs, okay, but you don't have Quandre Diggs and Kenny Vaccaro. Maybe could do it, but that's a rare combo. Unlikely would be to Jerry's point, completely unlikely.
Well, we got some more super chats to get to this morning, and we're going to start here with Jack. Thank you, Jack. As always, he says, Jerry, your article that included some comments about Venables got me to wondering, in your and Bobby's opinion, who makes a better head coach, an offensive-minded or defensive-minded coach?
It's a good, interesting question. I've always said I don't think it traditionally matters, because I think the whole key with any head coach when he's hired is, do you know who to hire on your staff? And then do you let those guys coach? That's where I've always come out on this, right? I mean, look, Nick Saban was a defensive-minded head coach that evolved with the game of college football. So much of this, Bobby, is how you evolve as a coach when the game changes. You can be an offensive coach. You better hire the right defensive coordinator, and you better be willing to evolve. Same thing with a defensive coach. Got to hire the right guys on your staff. I mean, it's all so much of this. You can almost look at a staff initially. If you go through the Texas coaches, you can almost look at the initial staffs and say, I don't like his chances of having success.
I completely agree.
And
I also agree with you. I don't think it matters offense or defense. Like I go back to Bob Stoops, total defensive coach. Who's he hire right out of the gate? Mike Leach.
Yeah. As
his offense coordinator. I just don't. I've thought about this because partly because Texas has changed coaches, 3 times in the last decade and a half, and you kind of wonder, where they need to go. I think that going back and looking at it, I think there is typically lower downside to a defensive coach if you're going at Texas. I think there's more upside to an offensive coach. That's my take on it. So I will say that the major trend right now in the NFL is on offense, because they don't want to lose. Offensive coordinators will go get better jobs in the NFL. Defensive coordinators are not being hired at the same rate in the NFL. So you got to keep your offensive coordinator as a head coach, is the thought process in the NFL. Well, it's a little bit different in the NFL too, because you don't have to worry about recruiting. It's actually the GM is handling all that, like all of it, right? So for me, at least personally, I don't think it matters. I think to Jerry's point, I think it's who you put around you and the personnel you have.
And the thing with offensive head coaches too, look, all the rules are made for offense in sports. I mean, period. Like there was a great interview at Sooner Cowboys as defense wins championship. What's weird is I think you got to play good defense. I don't think necessarily great defense, and maybe it depends on your sport. Now you got to be good, but man, everything is turning so much about offense in rules, in sports, period. What kids want to be recruited to. Everything is trending the offensive basketball, offensive football, offensive sports. And there was an interview with Gino Auriemma and Dan Hurley throughout NCAA tournament time, and they were saying we don't recruit defensive players only anymore. Those days are over in sports. You have to recruit guys who can score the basketball, who have offensive ability, who you can teach to be good enough defenders. And I think that's spot on in all sports. I mean, if you look at the national championship games, I mean, Notre Dame was really good on defense. They can score enough. I mean, you got to be able to score at a higher rate nowadays. You just have to.
RL from Texas. This is not true. There hasn't been a head coach that calls his own, that is also the offensive coordinator and calls plays that has won a national championship. That's untrue. I mean, Steve Spurrier never didn't call a play. I mean, but that's not calling anybody out. I think that you've got to wait and see. Ryan Day used to call his own plays. He changed for 1 year. Maybe that helped. I don't know. Gus Malzahn won a national championship calling his own plays. So, right? Didn't he win a national championship?
He lost to FSU in the game.
Jimbo Fisher won, but he lost to Jimbo Fisher, who called his own plays.
Yeah.
So, my point being, I think that's not necessarily true.
All right. Our next super chat this morning comes from the Sports Dojo. Thank you for your super chat. For basketball, how is Houston a national contender every year and Texas isn't? And how can Texas become the best basketball program in the state?
Well, Kelvin Sampson one's done a great job. Tillman Fertitta's bought into that program, which is great for Sampson and his staff. And he's been there a long time now. And he's a great coach, he's a Hall of Fame coach. But goes back to that whole conversation we just had. The biggest issue that he has to get over that hump is when you get in the game that you got to score 70 against a really good team that can also score 80, like Baylor blitzed them a few years ago when they won the title. It's always been the struggle. But look, I mean, Kelvin Sampson's been there a long time. Let's see what Sean Miller does at Texas. Sean Miller spoke at the TABC last week, and I had two high school coaches text me. One coach texted me, one DM me and said, unbelievable, total change. Texas basketball's in really good hands with Sean Miller. Just his speaking time with the high school coaches was probably the most impressive of any Texas coach they've ever heard.
That's good. Well, I think that from an offensive standpoint, I would hope so.
Yeah,
I'll just put that out there because we're going to Rodney Terry, defensive, even Chris Beard, defensive coach.
By the way, the other thing with coaching that that's always interesting to me is if you fire a defensive coach, you hire an offensive coach. If you fire an offensive coach, you hire a defensive coach. Bobby, isn't it amazing how it's just so extreme to extreme? If Brent Venables doesn't make it at Oklahoma, they're going to go try to hire Lane Kiffin or Dillingham or one of the offensive guys that's seen as the offensive minds. And it's amazing if you look at Florida, Urban Meyer, to Will Muschamp, defensive guy, to Dan Mullen, offensive guy. And it's amazing how it just keeps. Steve Spurrier leaves South Carolina. Who'd they go to? Defensive mind. It's crazy how it always is the opposites. And it doesn't – Ohio State hasn't done that. They've done very well. Obviously, Lincoln Riley from Bob Stoops, but Stoops was a defensive guy that had good offensive thoughts when he got to Oklahoma on where college football was headed. But it's amazing how when they go through these changes, it's always one extreme to the other. It's just funny how that always works out in football hires.
Yes, and I never forget, I was sitting with DeLoss Dodds, and there's several people around, and he was talking about his thought process. This is DeLoss Dodds, for those unaware, former longtime Texas athletic director, 25, 30 years. He always said when you go to a new coach, you're always more likely to go to someone that is opposite. And he was saying it doesn't matter, Jerry, if it's offense or defense as much as it is temperament. So, for example, John Malkovich was seen as a very stolid, wine and cheese kind of guy at the University of Texas. So they went and got good old boy Mac Brown from North Carolina. So it's not so much for Mr. Dodds, it was not so much offense, defense, although that can be one of the pieces. For them, or for him, it was, is he different in a way that folks have been kind of clamoring for? You know what I mean? And so I think that that was his thought process, I guess, when he went through coaches. And ultimately landed like he went from David McWilliams, who was a Texas good old boy, long-term ties to the program, to John Malkovich, who had no ties to the program whatsoever, was a Northerner, etc. Then from John Malkovich to a Mac Brown, who's a totally different type. So I saw that. He went from Bob Weltlich, a basketball coach that was brutal, to Tom Penders, who was wide open basketball. Didn't really coach defense much. And so that was DeLoss Dodd's thought process. It wasn't necessarily offense, defense, as it was style and who they were and what they evoked. I mean, and I don't know that he's right. I don't know that what Mr. Dodds was doing was necessarily right, but that's what he did in part because of those feelings.
Hey, just something for the chat, like moving. It's going to be interesting looking forward in college football. So I just looked up, since 2014, your national championship games, the winner, Ohio State, would have scored 42. That Alabama-Clemson game in 2015 was 45-40. 2016, Clemson beat Bama 35-31. Clemson scored 44 in 2018. LSU was an offensive team, scored 42 in 2019. Alabama beat Ohio State 52 is what they scored in the national title game. Georgia beat Alabama, scoring 33. Obviously, Georgia ended TCU 65-7. Michigan scored 34 in a national championship game. Ohio State 34, 23 for Notre Dame. The only game since 2014 that was decided in the 20s was Alabama at Georgia. And I think it goes to the point where, you have to be good on defense. Everybody that gets to that game is good on defense. But sports is changing, man. The average winning score in a national championship in college football is probably, from the looks of this, without doing the math, is averaging almost 41 points a game, 40 to 41 points a game. That is not great defense. That's, you're good on defense, but the athletes and the rules are made for offense. And you better be able to adapt and score the football in modern college football. 2017 ain't winning a national title anymore. No chance.
That's what Texas ran into last year. They weren't quite good enough on offense.
Yep.
They were good enough on defense, in my opinion. They weren't quite good enough on offense.
All right, guys, before we get to our last few questions of the day, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell everyone about Longhorn Wealth Management Group.
Yep. Thank you to our sponsor, John Donovan, President, Longhorn Wealth Management. As a proud UT alum, John has served for 15 years as a Dallas, Texas Exes chapter board member and is now helping lead the build out of the Collin County, Texas Exes chapter. John wants to wish major congratulations to all of our fantastic UT students, 13,000 or so, who graduated this past weekend on the 40 acres. A special shout out to our student athletes who also graduated. To celebrate all of these great educational achievements, John would like to recommend that all OTF fans take the time to schedule a free 90-minute private consultation with John to learn how working with a certified financial planner can help educate you about the various investment and planning strategies and solutions that can allow you to maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and ensure your legacy. Take advantage of this free 90-minute consultation. Call John and the Longhorn Wealth Team, 972-707-4900. That's 972-707-4900. Or go online, www.longhornwealth.net, to schedule your meeting today. Congrats to all the recent UT grads and Hook 'em Horns. Good stuff, John. Thank you. By the way, before we leave, we got to say this because UT put this out. Today is May 12th. So guess what? That happens to be the area code of the University of Texas, 512. UT put this out today, 512 day. So as you're in the office or walking around, you can think about it that way. Think about the motherland, Austin, Texas, in the area code 512. Good stuff from the university. I love that. I think that's the first time they've ever done something like that. Maybe somebody's mentioned it before. But yeah. Anyways, good idea.
Yep. All right, we got a super chat from Jackson F. Thank you, Jackson. And I think he's going back to the baseball here. He says, I do not really care about conference tournaments. If already in the postseason, would rather use it to get healthy for the postseason and develop young players. And Schloss made a similar comment that it'd be great to win the tournament. Don't get him wrong, but what really matters is winning it all. So I feel like the coaching staff feels the same way as you do, Jackson.
Do you feel the same way in basketball, Jerry?
Well, it depends. If you're a 1 or 2 seed, yes.
It does matter.
Yeah. Well, the year Texas went to the Final Four with TJ, they lost in the first round to Texas Tech, and I don't think they gave up. They actually wanted the days off. A lot of times they don't want to play 4 games in 4 days or 3 games.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It gets your legs tired.
No doubt. I mean, so
like that.
If you already have a 1 or 2 seed locked up, you don't really care.
Yeah, makes sense.
One other on your arm, but baseball's a little bit different. You're not going to get a full day's of rest unless your starting pitcher just pitched so many innings.
Yeah,
like this the whole sidebar discussion. Then Jerry goes to what they're talking about right now among the conference officials and this whole college football playoff. Instead of playing 1v2 for the SEC championship, they might go to a 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5.
Yeah,
as a play-in game for the championship. Or excuse me, for the college football playoff.
Yeah.
So do those guys did Georgia get hurt by playing an extra game in the college football or in the SEC championship? Clearly they did. They lost their starting quarterback.
Yeah.
When Texas dislocated his shoulder. That extra game may have cost Georgia a chance at a national championship. So, it'll be interesting to see whether the extra game rule plays out in conference championship games as you go to a college football tournament, as opposed to just individual games.
Yeah.
Got a super chat from my middle child. He says,
Nice.
He's in there. Not feeling the best.
Under the weather.
Tate has a doctor's appointment here in a little bit. All right, Horn for life. Do y'all like the game with Ohio State being the first game, or would you prefer easing into the season? For me, I like giving the competition early, makes fall camp much more serious.
That's a great question. I get Bobby. My initial reaction is I want to play Ohio State as early as possible. I like playing them without a game under their belt with new OC, new DC, new quarterback, and they lost more impactful players than the other team in college football. So in this scenario, I love playing Ohio State right out of the gate.
I tend to agree with you. Here's the other piece. You play Florida right out of the gate in conference play too. And you're on the road on both of those.
Yeah.
I mean, that is not I know, Chris, I'm anxious. I'm interested. I'm going to Ohio State. I want to see I love these non-conference matchups. But Texas plays its first game at Ohio State and then goes to Gainesville, Florida for its first conference game. I mean, right out of the gate on both accounts. I don't know how I feel, to be honest. Like, it's been a while since Texas has had a first game of the year like this. It's typically the second game, to Jerry's point, or has been recently. So I don't know the answer yet, but I know that the first game of the year is at Ohio State. The first conference game is in Gainesville. Those are two of the most 5 to 10, I don't want to say intimidating, but certainly rocking places to play in college football on the road.
And that's why I was talking about earlier. That's a great question because, I mean, there's 4 huge games that first weekend in college football. And here's the downside to that. What if LSU goes into Clemson and gets their doors blown off? Then Brian Kelly's in a fight for his team right out of the gate. So it's always interesting, but I think it depends on, like, LSU, not a good scenario for me. And they may win the game, who knows, but they're going into play an experienced quarterback, now a more experienced team in their house to start the year. I mean, even the Savannah Bananas aren't going to be able to bring the excitement in Clemson Stadium when LSU rolls in there. I mean, that place is going to be rocking. So LSU is going into a Hornets nest against an experienced team that has, Todd McShay said, 6 first-round picks this year. If he's even close to right, if there's 4.5. But so it's all scenarios, right? I mean, Texas, you want to play Ohio State first game. You'd rather play them first game this year than third game. I guarantee you that. So it's all the scenarios. But if you go in and you're playing a very experienced team, I used to laugh at the teams that wanted to play Nick Saban out of conference to start the year. I'm like, good luck with that.
You get overwhelmed by talent, Booth.
Yes. And so, you know, a coach look, if Notre Dame goes in and beats Miami in Miami to start the year in front of it, there'll probably be 60,000 in the stadium. There were 50,000 Notre Dame fans. But Mario Cristobal, then, did you make the right decision, the portal at quarterback? Do you really have this thing headed the right direction? So I love the games, but there's going to be some outcomes of these games this year. And a Brian Kelly and Mario Cristobal, if they lose those games, people are going to be like, are y'all going to get it done here? I mean, that's ultimately what's going to be asked.
Speaking, one note to mention right now for everybody, by the way, Fox has their upfronts today. The advertising upfronts, Fox Sports does. It would be unsurprising if they announced a game time for Texas Ohio State today.
Bet it's noon.
So we're on the lookout for that, big noon kickoff conversation to possibly happen later today, because Fox is dealing with advertisers in New York City right now. So it's possible we hear a game time verified there between the Longhorns and Ohio State. All odds are, 11 o'clock Central, 12 o'clock Eastern.
Yeah. We will close with this super chat from Splendid Daddy. Speaking of the Ohio State game, and thank you for your super chat. What's your best case scenario, but a realistic one, for a stat line for Arch against Ohio State?
Best case versus realistic. 20 of 30, 275. Something like that. 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Maybe 3. Maybe two passing, 1 rushing. I mean, it's real. Here's the reality. He needs to not throw a pick and not turn the ball over for Texas to have a better than average chance. He does that, maybe 18 of 30, 270, accounting for 3 TDs, running or passing. But don't turn the ball over in Columbus. Don't do that.
My one prediction for that game, that dude's going to get down or get out of bounds.
He better. Yep.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football. Bobby, what do you have later today for everybody?
Jeff Howe and CJ Vogel are going to get together, talk a little football and football recruiting. CJ's been on the road for us the last week, meeting with John Turntine, Jalen Lott, Felix Oja. There are half dozen guys that are among the top players in the state of Texas. And he's been out there. Jeff and he are going to talk a little bit about that. And then at 3 o'clock, 3:15, Rod Babers and Coach Shipley are there, along with CJ for the winning drive. Jerry and I come back at 7 o'clock tonight, and we're taking your recruiting questions on Talking Ball. I hope you guys all join us. If you do not have a subscription, by the way, to ontexasfootball.com, you might want to try to get one. We're over there talking about recruiting all day long. Jerry's on the road himself today as well, seeing Derek Cooper, some people believe the number 1 running back in the country out of Chaminade, Madonna. You can get a subscription to ontexasfootball.com $49.95 a year. If you use the promo code OTFOG, that's good for first-time subscribers only. Use the promo code OTFOG.
And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell so you're notified anytime we go live or post content. And between those two avenues, we got you covered around the clock right here on Texas Football. Of course, we'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. So for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you then.
Welcome, Horn.